jamming. Hear the crack of the band and the cracker jacks band say, hey, we're jamming to the Jamestown jamming. Boom, Jamestown jamming, jamming down Jamestown way. Hey, it's a baseball game down Jamestown way. Catch a double play, jamming with the Jamestown jamming. On the first base, second base, third base, oh, it's a home run jamming with the Jamestown jamming.
Everyone, and welcome to a very special night. It's the Jamestown Baseball Roundtable. We're going to take a look back at the great history of baseball here in Jamestown, along with the future of the Jamestown Jammers. Hello, everybody. My name is Rick Lopez. I am the new voice of the Jamestown Jammers, and the season starts tomorrow night at 7:05 at Diethrick Park as the Jammers take on the Auburn Double Days. And what we're going to do tonight, we will look ahead at the Jammers, but we're going to take a look back at the past. And boy, am I surrounded by an all-star group of gentlemen here who know all the ins and outs of baseball, and it's indeed my pleasure to introduce a man who really doesn't need to be introduced, Greg Peterson. Greg, how you doing tonight?
Doing terrific, Rick.
Oh, boy, I tell you, we got a big night ahead of us here. In this next hour, we're going to be talking about the history of baseball in Jamestown, which goes back quite a ways.
Not only are we going to talk about it, but we have a lot of it here in the room itself. And by the way, welcome. Welcome to the community.
Well, thanks a lot, Greg. It's great to be here. And one of the first things I did was I got a chance to read that book, Across the Seams, and that really got me caught up with everything that's going on with baseball here in this town for so many years. And I had no idea the history, the ball players that have come through here, all the excitement that happened at Diethrick Park, and I can't tell you how excited I am to be here and get ready for another Jamestown Jammer season starting tomorrow night.
Well, here's a quick quiz, Rick.
Okay, good. I'm ready, Greg.
Okay, what does Babe Ruth, Honus Wagner, Christy Mathewson, Cy Young, Nellie Fox, Randy Johnson, Andres Galarraga, John Elway, and Pete Rose have in common?
Well, they all came to Jamestown.
They all played professional baseball.
Didn't Babe Ruth hit a ball into Chautauqua Lake?
He sure did.
Yeah.
Though even Johnny O'Neill, who's one of our guests, I don't think he was at that game, were you, Jim?
Before my time.
Well, Greg, I'm going to let you take it over, and I know you're dying to introduce these guys that are here with us tonight. I tell you, this is indeed an all-star group you've assembled this evening.
Well, thanks, Rick, and we look forward to the next 50 minutes here. And among the special guests we have here is John O'Neill. John O'Neill, whose career spans a lot of years, from 1939 through 1984, and we're going to talk to John in some great detail in a few minutes. We also have here in the studio Russ Diethrick, who is Mr. Baseball. Does not need an introduction. And the guy who's written most about Russ Diethrick for the last 25 years, the sports editor of the Jamestown Post-Journal, is also with us, Jim Riggs. And so collectively, this is going to be just an extraordinary evening of baseball, baseball history, baseball nostalgia, and no better place than in Jamestown. Jamestown has an exceedingly rich history, and I'm just going to give kind of a brief overview, if I could. Their first recorded baseball in the area, and this is through the old Fenton History Society, was in 1866, when 19-year-old Clint Windsor organized the Unknowns. They played teams from Warren, Erie, and Cleveland. From that seed came the first professional team in 1890, which played at Marvin Park, which was near the old boat landing. Selron Park, Allen Park, and Diethrick Park all have showcased the great talents of baseball. Black baseball legends like Josh Gibson, Satchel Paige, Babe Ruth's All-Stars, and many of the barnstorming major league teams all came and thrilled the citizenry for miles around. Since 1939, Jamestown, as a charter member of the Pony League, has been a great source of community pride. The story of professional baseball in Jamestown is about those individuals, and we have some of them in the studio today. 1941 was a time of excitement here in Jamestown. It was at that time that really it was the renewal of professional baseball in Jamestown. And the shortstop for that team is our guest here today, Johnny O'Neill. And John, could you give us a little flavor of how you ended up in Jamestown, New York?
Well, I signed with the Buffalo Club, had a scout that went around holding trial camps all over the eastern part of the United States, and I signed out of a camp in Greenville, Tennessee. And I went from there. I worked out. I hadn't had a baseball in my hand since last September, and this was April. Well, I worked out one day, and they signed me, and then another day I worked out, and I was on a bus to Tallahassee, and the season had already opened down there. Mm-hmm. So they took a little easy for me, and they gave me about 7 days to get acclimated and to see what it was about. And I didn't get off to a very good start, and I got released. Then I come up to Greenville, Tennessee, which was another Buffalo Farm Club, and they were looking for a shortstop, and I got a job there and got off to a good start.
Great. How did you connect up with Greg Malimi?
I was in spring training in 1940 with the Buffalo Club. After I had a good year at my first year out, and they chose me in the working agreement. They had 3 players they took off that club, and I was one of them. And Greg was the coach for Steve O'Neill, mm-hmm. And Greg was as kind and gentle with us younger fellows as he was with his old running mates. He had a bunch of old buddies on the club, and they'd frolic around, but he was just a genuine good man.
What was 60 years ago, what was then known as Municipal Stadium was opened up. Do you remember that first day?
Yes, I do, very well. It was loaded. It was loaded, boy. They were lined up. I'll tell you, during that whole season, of course, we had one heck of a ball club, but the whole season, we'd go down at 5:30 to work out. Mm-hmm. For a 7:30 game, we'd go down and get a batting practice and infield and so on. There would already be a line down there clear out to the street, waiting to get in the ballpark.
Tell me about opening night.
Well, opening night, we got the heck beat out of us. we were playing Batavia. I think they beat us about 11-1 or something. And they had a big, skinny sinker ball pitcher. I didn't know what a sinker ball pitcher was then, but I can look back at him and see him just as plain. He just ate us up. And we didn't have our club together yet either. What we ended up with? Heck, we ended up with the best ball club that you could imagine. It's the best ball club I ever played on anywhere, except maybe the 49 Hollywood Club. For classification, I mean, to classify them, and so on. But this club here with John Newman, Frankie Heller, Frank Carswell, Earl Rapp, John Pollock, who's my friend. He's sick.
Yeah. And our prayers go out to John. John, hopefully you're listening to us tonight. I mean, we're all thinking about you. And the nice thing about John, you had that terrific year, and then a whole lot of things happened that first year. Not only record attendance, but similarly, that started a trend in Jamestown baseball, a trend which was extraordinary. And you mentioned names like Johnny Newman here a few minutes ago. Now, tell me a little bit about what does Johnny Newman mean to you, John?
Man, he was a strong right-hand hitter, and don't throw him nothing soft. Yeah. If we get him out with a curveball, if they throw it up there, he'd hit it up in the field. Mm-hmm. Tremendous, and a good guy on the club. Good, he was a little older than the rest of us. Right. But he was, and he took care of everybody, and they kept harmony on the club. Everybody wants harmony,
Could he have been a major leaguer based on his hitting ability?
Definitely, but he broke a leg. See, he played about 4 or 5 years, and he was playing somewhere and slid into a base, broke a leg, and was out for. And they didn't have the medical facilities they have now, so they didn't watch him, and he could eat. and he just ate himself out of a big league, a good big league.
Well, I understand that John, in looking at the record book, led the league in home runs in 1941 and 1942, and in fact, I think may have won the batting title similarly those 2 years. One of those crowd pleasers. Tell me another crowd pleaser was a guy named Jake Pitler.
Jake was a good, solid baseball man. He came up the hard way. He played many years. He knew the game, and he was a good politician. Real smart operator. He and Greg got together. And they put on a show every time we'd play, and then the next time you couldn't get them in the seats. There were too many people.
So people came specifically to see the Olean Oilers.
Yeah, on account of Jake, but they didn't have much of a club.
Yeah.
The Dodgers didn't have much at that time, and but it wasn't to see the baseball. They had to come to see Greg and watch our club perform, because we could play, buddy. We had a good club.
Now, you won the pennant that year, right?
Easy. The laugher.
And after 41, you moved up, and where'd you go after that, John?
I went spring training with Buffalo again, and then from there I went to they optioned 4 or 5 of us. We filled up half a bus to, and we went to Winston-Salem, and I got sick up there. I had a strep throat or something, and got out. And meanwhile, some other shortstop coming in was playing pretty good, so they kept him and sent me to Bristol.
Mm-hmm.
I commuted. And by the time I got over Bristol and got my legs back under me and got to feeling pretty good, the shortstop got hit in the head. So I had to go back across the hill. That's what they used to say, going over the hills. There's a mountain over, and between Winston-Salem and Bristol. And I didn't have a very good year that year, except because I was hurt and sick part of the time. Then that's when I went spring training with Jamestown. We went to Waynesboro, Virginia, and he had the balance of his ball club. I mean, we had Hiller and me and John Pollock. John Pollock was on the club, and what a catcher, boy. A dandy. Yep. My roommate.
Yep.
I'd be good to him. And then let's see, that was the...
Did you find your way? Didn't you up in the Pacific? You worked the Pacific Coast League?
Next year, I went with Buffalo spring training again, and went to Elmira, and I played for the manager at Winston-Salem for 4, and he didn't like me, and I didn't like him, so I went to the guy that owned the club, the old pitcher. He carried a gun. I didn't talk mean. I talked real slow and light. And I told him. He said the club was going on the road. It went up to Hartford and another club up there in the upper end of the east. And he said, "Why aren't you on that bus?" I said, "I'm not going to go." I said, "I'm not going to play up there. I want to be shipped out." They had Andy Cohen and an older shortstop about his same age. Andy was up in his 40s. Yeah. And the shortstop was 36 or something. I said, "I'm not going to sit here and watch them guys play. That's not going to help my career." Sure. I said, "I want to go somewhere and play." He said, "Maybe you're right." Says, I'll see what I can do for you. Come call me back about 11 o'clock. So I got in. I went to Pittsfield, went up there, hit 292, and had a real good year. And we didn't have a manager. Well, they fired the manager, made the second baseman manager. He was my double play man. We got along real good, and it was loosey goosey all the time, every day. And then I was sold to Buffalo. Sold me to Portland.
John O'Neill, major leaguer, Philadelphia Phillies, 1946. How did you feel when you finally were told you were going to the big show?
I thought I was 6 foot tall. Yeah. You just can't believe the elation that you feel.
Yeah.
Great, tremendous.
Then you were there for 1946 and spent a lot of time at the Hollywood Stars.
I went from there to Seattle. I stayed 2 years with Seattle, and then they traded a pitcher named Rugger Artazoya for me. He was a Yankee prospect at one time, and they traded us, and I stayed there at Hollywood, and we won a pennant the first. Well, I guess we won 2 out of 3 years, but the best player we had on that ball club by far was Irv Noren, the Jamestown boy.
Yeah. Did he introduce himself as a Jamestown boy, or did you know him?
Well, I knew of him. Yeah, but you didn't have to introduce yourself to him. He just fit right in like a hand in the glove. Maybe he went right in there.
Yeah.
He was tremendous, and he hit about I'd say 350, 360, and drove in a whole bunch of runs and hit a lot of very important runs. He'd drive people in from first base. That's the most important runs in the ball game. Remember that. The most important runs in a ball game is the runs that you drive in from first base.
That's right. And there, by the way, John, you don't see it on the radio, but was pointing to David Wellenzone, who's also in the studio here today, and to and asking and encouraging me to remind everybody that tomorrow is opening day at Russell Diethrick Park, and the gates will open at 5 o'clock, and the opening pitch will be at 7:05. We have a chance here. We're talking to John O'Neill, Russ Diethrick, and Jim Riggs. John, after the Hollywood Stars, you found your way back to Jamestown again in 1954.
Yeah, I went up to, I was traded to Oakland. I stayed in Oakland, and then right before the end of the season, the guy was losing money. He wasn't drawing nobody. We had a lousy club. And so I got released, and before I got home, my wife got a phone call from San Francisco asking me to come and finish the season with them. So I went over and finished the season with them and played like as good a ball as I ever played in my life. Yeah. I didn't do no wrong. Didn't do no wrong. And then I managed at Salinas in the California League, and we had a working agreement with Pittsburgh, and they didn't send us, what they would send is what they had left over out of spring training. You know, the dregs of what they had left over, and they didn't help me. I had some local guys, kids out of San Francisco and on the coast out there, and they could have done a better job, but Pittsburgh sent them, so we had to play them. And we didn't do any good, so we got the general manager that was at Salinas before the season opened. He stole a bunch of money from them. And so they fired him.
Statute of limitations is right.
And they wanted me to do both jobs. Well, I was just my first year managing. What the hell? I couldn't make out, buddy. I couldn't do anything. Then they got a new general manager, and I recommended the guys that they got. He was general manager of Johnson City, Tennessee, and I played down in the Appalachian League, and they brought him in there to help run the club. He fired me right off the bat. And he stuck a knife in my back. Anyway, then I got a call from Hillman Lyons, who was managing Jamestown. We had a shortstop here named Pollock. Was it Pollock?
There was a
hitter, a good hitter.
Yes.
Little round type guy. Anyway, he was kicking the ball over the infield, so they wanted a shortstop, so they moved him in the outfield, and he played shortstop, and we could have won the pennant, but they took some games away from us because we brought some players back from the year before, finish the season with like you can do, but somewhere or other they weren't eligible to play, so they took 2 games away from us, and Corning beat us.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
We're going to correct the book on that. So you finished up the 1954 season here. You found your way after playing, being involved as a general manager and at a variety of places down south. You came back to Jamestown in 1961, and the guy to your right here was the guy that brought you back.
No. John McHale brought me back.
Okay.
John McHale was the general manager at Milwaukee.
Okay.
And I knew John, I wrote him a letter and told him that I'd like to give job scouting.
Mm-hmm. So
he said, okay. He said, what territory you want? I said, I'll take California because they know me out there, and I can help. He said, we got our best scout out there, Johnny Moore, the old left-handed hitting outfielder. So you can't have that. You're out. And I said, well, what about the Jamestown area? He says, it's yours. So I scouted for him in 2 years, and then he and Jim Campbell got together. I don't know whether I don't think they nipped, but I wonder about it. And they wanted a general manager for Jamestown, and I'd been general manager for the Tigers for 3 years 4 years, 3 years in Valdosta, Georgia, 1 year in Montgomery, Alabama, and it was the toughest job I ever had. Is to come back here and try to be the general manager. I didn't want to do anything to hurt the ball club. I don't think I had a bad word to say to anybody. Like they're talking about selling the fence and the ads, the book. Well, if they turned me down, I never bothered them anymore because I didn't want to do anything to hurt the ball club, and I was trying to be careful. But we got through. What
was it like at that time? As far as attendance, here in the early 60s, Was minor league baseball at a...
Everything was down, and we've had a little bit of a recession economically, and it was tough. It was tough, and the kids that you got then were all good kids. They give you their best shot, and they wanted to play, and they wanted to get to the big leagues. And then Detroit was never a club that would lay that money out too much. They watched the buck pretty good. And you see where they are now. They're getting ready. They're getting ready to come right back right now. Right now they've got that ball club back there, and they're laying out some money. Though now they don't get that Gonzalez down there out of West Texas without putting out some mucho rocks.
It's interesting because at that time period, there was another guy in Jamestown who was intimately involved in baseball and making sure that it stayed here and became a institution as it is today, a guy named Russ Diethrick. And maybe I could turn the mic over to Russ for a second.
I just want to say one thing.
Sure.
Some people that was here, Harry Bisgeier owned the club here when I came here. And we had some old-timers in this town, Judge Barger, right, and Ernie Kessler, and some of them guys. They're the backbone that started this whole thing. They got this ball. They went to the politics. They got that ballpark built, and that's the right.
That's right, John. 100% right.
How did Russ Diethrick get involved in baseball here? I know that you were. I'm not supposed to say this on the air. You go back to literally your roots were baseball. Born in 1934, and your mother was dutifully expecting you, and at the same time expecting your dad home anytime from the coal mines and keeping track of the box scores. So you're a guy literally born into baseball.
We're right in the middle of it, I guess, yes. I was born October 9th, 1934, and that was the final day of the World Series for the Cardinals and the Tigers. And the mother kept box scores, and when I arrived, I guess the Cardinals had won the World Series, so that's something to cheer about.
That's been your club ever since?
Well, it's been one of them, yes, John.
It's a soft spot.
That's right, yes. But he brought baseball into us. And, baseball was part of my grandfather's life and my father's life, enjoying it and playing it as best they did around the coal mines and the farm towns. So baseball was always a discussion in our family. Mother enjoyed it. I don't know if it was to make father happy or not, but there was always baseball talk in our family, so it was natural for me to do that.
You moved to Jamestown at age 5?
5, yes.
You got intimately involved in sports just like everybody else?
I was lucky. When we moved to Jamestown, we moved over in 33 Charles Street, right across the street from the Charles Street School. And Miss Sherman was the principal, and she allowed us to play baseball on the front lawn. And we broke a window or two, but she always got our ball back for us. And so that was the start of neighborhood baseball, and then with the city muni leagues and all of the other programs. And we played baseball 12 months a year. We'd go out on the sidewalk and shovel a bare spot in the snow so we could stand in it and play catch. And when other kids were taking books to school, we were taking our glove and ball. One fellow would walk down one side of the sidewalk and another one down the other side. We'd play catch on the way to school and on the way back. Never would see our bicycle without a glove on the handlebar.
Your interest in professional baseball, when did that start?
Well, interested, and it's exciting to sit here and you can understand why John O'Neill would be a hero to us as youngsters and a hero to the community. And with all of that baseball around us, Jamestown had a rich baseball history in the amateur baseball, and of course the Falcons and the professionals down at the stadium we were in awe of them all the time. And family made it available to get to the stadium occasionally and see a ball game, and that kind of thing carried on. And I was fortunate enough in about 1958 to get involved with the Parks and Recreation Department, and Jim Sharp was then the director. And he asked me if I would handle the community athletic program for him in the evenings and weekends, and baseball was a major part of that. And slowly that got involved with the Falcons and the operation at the stadium, municipal stadium in those days. And so it got us close to baseball and close to the baseball people. And as John said, it was getting tough in the 60s. Minor league baseball was struggling a bit. And so there was a lot of people that come forward as volunteers. It was a group of volunteers like, Marty Haynes and Lou Shepard and Eric Gogan and just a whole host of other people that volunteered their time and gave their money to really kind of keep baseball alive. We were struggling with 175, 200 people, 250 people a night at the stadium on a nice night was a great night for us. And we were able to struggle to keep it going.
Well, we're expecting a whole lot more than that come tomorrow night, which is opening day at Jamestown Jammers against the Auburn Doubledays. The gates will open at 5 o'clock, and the opening pitch at 7:05. You're listening to the Jamestown Jammers preseason special on WKSN. We're here with John O'Neill, Russ Diethrick, and Jim Riggs. That WKSN is the home of the Jammers, and we're going to take a short break now, and we'll be right back.
This year, it's a whole new ball game. The Jamestown Jammers 2000, minor league baseball at its finest. The most affordable family fun around. Don't miss the season opener as the Jamestown Jammers take on the Auburn Doubledays this Tuesday night at 7:05 at Diethrick Park. There will be opening day festivities and an outdoor performance. Wednesday, June 21st, is Keystone Buyout Night. The Jammers 2000, it's a whole new ball game. Tickets are $3, $4, and $5 available at Wegmans in Lakewood and at Diethrick Park daily from 9 to 5 before the game. The Jamestown Jammers, the most affordable family fun around.
And we're doing this the day before the opener tomorrow against the Auburn Doubledays. And as Dave Wellenzone is hitting me in the back, as the general manager is reminding me the gates open at 5 o'clock. An opening pitch. And Mayor Teresi will be throwing out that opening pitch at 7:05. And Sam, that one's for you. Oh, it's terrific. And along the stadium seats, along the bleachers, which will be fantastic for those that have not been down. In fact, there was a wonderful picture by one of our guests, Jim Riggs, in the Post-Journal, which it showed those brand new seats. And so for all those who have not been down there, just to walk through, come on down, and you'll have an opportunity to see those. We're here with John O'Neill, Russ Diethrick, and Jim Riggs. And we were kind of left ourselves in the early 60s, and when you were happy to get crowds of 200 to 250, you were associated with what team then?
Well, we had the Tigers there for the early part of the 60s. The Tigers were there. And then, the player development contracts were different in those days. There was a lot of responsibility for the local team, which there are not today. And we just could not get together with the Tiger organization, so we severed the the player development contract with the Tigers. And then, of course, we had a run after that. We had the Dodgers were there for 1 year. Fresco Thompson brought the Dodgers in for a year with Bill Barrier and his team. And they have a young team, very exciting team that year, I remember. And then we got involved with the Boston Red Sox. Atlanta was there for a single year. Harry Dorsch was the manager, and Harry brought an exciting team into town, and we drew pretty well that year, if I remember. And then we had a long run with the Montreal Expos. Jim Fanning was involved with Atlanta, and he also was a developer of the Scouting Bureau. So we got to know Jim when he was involved bringing Atlanta in there for that single year. So baseball sat dormant for a while, if you remember, in Jamestown. A fellow by the name of Cliff Farnham, a businessman, insurance man in the community, had a great interest in baseball. And he came in the recreation office one day and just couldn't understand why there was no professional baseball in Jamestown. I said, well, we just ran out of volunteers and ran out of time to put it together. He said, well, I would love to try to do something to bring it back and make it work. I said, well, let me make a phone call, and called Jim Fanning, and he and Cliff got together, and the rest was history. The Expos were in here and had a great long run, about 17 years, I believe.
And Cliff Farnham, as I recall, was a caddy for Babe Ruth.
I understand that, yes, that's part of his history.
And Babe Ruth, just as a sidelight, did come to Chautauqua County in 1921, hit a ball into the lake with the Babe Ruth All-Stars.
And everybody you talked to was there to see it.
That's right, and they all have the ball.
They all have it.
I think Selron, there's folks in Selron have 20 or 30 balls of Babe Ruth hit into the lake.
But there were years that minor league baseball, it was struggling to draw crowds, and franchises were fragile. And as John said, there was a little depression during that period. It was hard to put some people in the ballpark. But everybody was in the same boat, and we struggled, had a good time doing it, was able to keep baseball alive, and see what the results of that is today. It's phenomenal what the Jammers are doing at the stadium.
One name that we should mention now who kept baseball alive not only in Jamestown but in the minor leagues and the pony leagues, the New York Penn League generally, was Vince McNamara, who recently passed away. I was looking at a couple of historical highlights here, and one of them, Vince brought in 1969 to the New York Penn League something that no other league had, which was the designated hitter.
That's right.
Whether you like it or hate it, it's the actual rule started in this league.
Yeah. And while I was involved with the league at that time, one of the league officers as a general manager of the Jamestown team, and I remember having a discussion before we took the vote, and I was not alone. There was some of those who was concerned about that. We just thought, what are they doing to baseball? And why are they changing it like that? Are they going to have us throw underhand next? And we had quite a long discussion, but with Vince's encouragement, the league then was the experimental position for that. Worked out well.
And aside from keeping the league here, there was also a guy who was making sure that there were enough players in the leagues. And Johnny, you were a scout with the Los Angeles Dodgers for several years.
No, I worked for the Braves.
Braves?
And
But it says the Dodgers. Didn't you have Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Delaware area?
well, I had that with the Tigers.
Oh, okay.
With the Tigers. And but anyway, it gets to be a real rat race in that scouting situation, because the money is there with some clubs, it's not there with others, and then the other club gets a little money, and they'll get into it next year, and it made it awful tough.
Yeah.
Did they have agents in those days, John? All the players?
No. A few did, but we found out who they were, and we stayed away from them. Didn't waste our time with.
John, you signed an awful lot of players. Who was the biggest player you signed?
Well, I signed Bill Robinson, the outfielder that was with the. I think he was with Pittsburgh at last.
Phillies.
Phillies. But anyway, I signed him, and I signed. I had him in my mind like him, and now I've gone blank.
John, in those days, where'd you find the ball players? You find them playing in sandlots? You find them in the backyards?
In schools, colleges, and high schools, and you go to tournaments, and any place they were playing ball, you go see them. In semi-pro tournaments, and you'd see a lot of the same ones over and over again. They would give you a good shot,
Back in Russ mentioned the fact that the Montreal Expo started a long run, in the mid-'70s. There was a guy who also started a long run and continues that long run here in Jamestown in the form of Jim Riggs, who started at the Post-Journal on April 28, 1975. But you're really a Pittsburgh Pirate fan, aren't you?
Yeah, not too much anymore. I still am, but now the major leagues, I just have lost the interest. Back in the days when I was a fan, nowadays Clemente would probably be a Yankee, Stargell would be a Dodger, Mazeroski would be an Astro, and who knows what. I don't know how the kids now can understand the sport, because when I was a fan, a player stayed with a team, or that it was a big trade. Now you don't hear of a big trade, or rarely.
Baseball's always been your principal love?
It started in 1960 with a home run by Mazeroski. My dad, he didn't like the sport. He was a football fan. I was a football fan. Never cared for the sport. And then in school, the kids were bringing the radios to class. The seventh game of the series, we had a TV in class. The girl with the TV, she had to leave to catch the bus. And we had a radio left. I remember Maz, he hit the home run. And we're in the hallway with the teachers running up and down the hallway, screaming and jumping. I thought, this is neat. I think I like this. So that did it.
So you caught all that, the excitement on the radio, which is a nice segue to the excitement you'll hear all year on the radio here at WKSN 1340, the home of the Jamestown Jammers. When you came to Jamestown, did you, Frank Hyde was still the
Right.
sports editor, and did you cover baseball immediately, or was it still Frank's domain?
No. When I started the team, it wasn't here, and then the team came back in '77. And Frank, he covered the first game, and I covered the first game for the Buffalo News. I might not be at work tomorrow, but that I remember Frank, he got a call, and that someone asked whether Frank could send up a story. And Frank, he called me up, and he said, do you want to make a couple bucks? They need a story and a photo. So that I covered the game. I typed out the story on a typewriter,
took the photo, drove to the Buffalo News. I arrived at like 4 in the morning, and I gave them the story. Then after that, Frank decided he couldn't go down there to cover the games anymore because it was too hard to get up to the press box, which the Jim Fanning was really concerned about that. Jim had said, we can set up a desk down below. Frank, he doesn't have to go up to the box. But, you know, Frank, he wanted to do it the right way, so Frank decided that he wouldn't cover the games and that I began to cover them.
You know, we talked about a lift to the top of the press box, and Frank refused. He would not let us even talk about it.
No, Frank was a proud man. And it should be brought up. Frank, he helped to keep this league alive,
absolutely.
too. Frank did the record book on his own for I don't know how many years. He did it for free. And Frank, he injured his arm, or else at his elbow. He got an injury to his elbow, which he still had. And it was from spending nights under a light doing all the records and writing.
You know, you mentioned that he helped save baseball in Jamestown, but you talked about the record book of the league. He really helped save the Pony League or the NYP League.
Yeah, the league itself.
Frank had not been on the scene, there wouldn't have been a Jamestown franchise today, and a lot of other ones would not be operating.
For everybody's attention, you are listening to the Jamestown Jammers preseason special on WKSN, the home of the Jammers. And we're talking to Jim Riggs. Jim, you've pretty much covered virtually every game that the Expos were here starting in 1977. You must have some highlights, or perhaps some personalities that come to mind.
Yeah, there's plenty. Pat Doherty, the manager. I was the lucky one to start out with Pat Doherty. And everybody here in this room would have stories about Pat. What a character, what a nice guy. When I started out as the young guy new to all this, and Pat, he treated me as though I'd been on the beat for years. Pat had a habit. I think he knew the nights that I was taking photos and I just didn't have anything. He'd get in an argument with the umpires. And then he would ask for copies of the prints the next day because Pat would have some dandies. I remember one time I ran a series of 6 shots across the top of the page where Pat did the standard, the hands on the hips, the nose to nose, the chest to chest, the throwing of the hat, the whole deal. So that Pat was just great at that stuff. What a character.
Andres Galarraga. Do you remember him?
Vaguely, I took a photo of him, which they have, I guess, in the program this year, with glasses.
Yeah.
Andres, I can recall him with the glasses. You wouldn't even know him now. And that I believe it was Pat who Andre was having trouble hitting. And I think it was Pat said that they had to get his eyes checked. And that brought on the glasses, and that helped his success.
Not many people really remember the best pitcher in baseball pitching in Jamestown, Randy Johnson.
That's because he didn't pitch too much here. I think he pitched about 7 innings or so that year. He had an injured arm. The main thing I remember about Randy, other than his height, was that one time I was walking by, I got my camera around my neck, and as you may know, that Randy's a photography nut, and he's also good at it. And he stopped me and was starting to talk about the camera and lenses and the whole deal. So that's what I remember about him. And I also remember a photo I took. I can't find the negative. But the same year we had on the team Mel Houston, who was, I think, a shortstop, 5'5". And I got a photo of 5'5" Mel standing beside 6'10" Randy, which was a great photo. But the negatives lost.
Candid camera. You were there. What was that like?
I knew about it ahead of time, and I'd been up in the booth before when Front was planning the whole thing and telling us all what would happen. And the main thing I remember about it was that when you were there live, knowing what was going on, this thing looked like a total dud because it just wasn't funny. Then once you saw it on tape and they had the dub-ins and you heard Pete and Skip and all that, it was hilarious. But I remember the fans were just getting furious. And I was standing there shooting the photos, and I remember Pat was all for it. Of course, Pat Doherty would do anything for, to promote the game. But on the mound was a pitcher, Billy Baxter, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
A graduate of Harvard. And Billy's out there, and he's getting all flustered. And Pat was getting concerned. And I remember at one time Pat said, this has to stop because he's losing it. But the key to the whole thing was, which isn't brought up, is that if he would have thrown a pitch, we had big-time trouble because that was a league game with Funt behind the plate, so that you didn't have an official umpire behind the game. So that if you watch the tape, you'll notice a couple of times Bill just decided, I'm going to throw and get this thing going, which was a good idea. And every time he'd do it, Funt would run out in front of the plate to stop him, just because that if that pitch was thrown,
mm-hmm.
I don't know the league would have been in trouble, the team would have been in trouble, and all that.
You've seen some championship teams here in Jamestown, been on the bus with some of the teams in Jamestown. I think there was one time you were riding back after a championship game, somebody even announced their retirement.
The pitcher. I can't remember his name now.
Yeah.
But that was the Pittsfield trip. The main thing I remember about the Pittsfield trip, when they won the title, you've got to remember, I'm used to traveling with high school teams or with colleges, and that we're leaving in the bus stops to pick up beer. This is something new. These guys are pros. Yeah, sure. So we're driving along, and the beer is flowing. I'm there typing my story, and that the pitching coach then was QV Lowe, and he got the microphone on the bus going. And everybody, they came up and they gave a speech or whatever, and it went on and on and on. Well, we're driving, and we're having a good old time, and I'm there typing, and did I tape this whole thing, which is a good tape to hear. We couldn't play it here, but we'd been on the road about an hour. I'd driven out with the team on the bus. I remember the driver, he didn't do a good job of finding Pittsfield. We'd been on the road about an hour. I happened to glance out the window, and I see a sign, Pittsfield 10 miles. We'd been going the wrong way for an hour, driving in a circle. Finally, one of the guys, he noticed it. He yelled out, except that the rest, after a few beers, they didn't care, and so then we got home, and things were fine.
What's the best team you've seen in Jamestown here?
Oh, geez. Probably the team which won at Pittsfield. The one team here, Pittsfield, was new to the league, and it was the Mets team. And that the first game was here just because they'd finished first. They joined the league. They led the league in attendance. They were the hot shots of the league. When they came here for the playoff game, the team flew. I mean, this is the NYP league. Teams don't fly. Pittsfield flew here. And I remember that the players here thought, who are these guys? What's this big deal? What they did is that they beat them here, went out there, they lost the next game, and then they won the third game to win the title. And then they got on the bus and rode home. But the guys who flew didn't win.
Marky Grissom, when he was playing in Jamestown here, was he a guy that you knew was going to make it to the major leagues?
I would say so. He just had that skill. I will proudly announce I'm the one who named Greg Grissom Gardens, which is right center field, because he hit more triples out there than you would believe. And then Grissom, after he played here, he was in the majors the next August.
It's on my slip here to ask you that question, so you can take full credit for it.
Okay, good.
For the archives.
Yes, I want that credit for Grissom Gardens.
You've seen the you mentioned Pat Doherty and the variety of the managers that have come through here, and certainly players. But there's been some guys who you actually saw on the day-to-day field. They told you they were the stars of tomorrow, but when you actually watched them, they left a lot to be desired. And maybe comment on the Delino DeShields and the Wilfredo Corderos of the world.
Delino was okay. I never had much trouble with him. He didn't seem too cocky or anything. One fella I remember, which I wasted a column on, all that space could have been saved, was this fella arrived from the World Series. He just had pitched in the series like on Saturday or Wednesday. So I thought, boy, here's a story. What's this like? So that I interviewed him, and I noticed this guy had a bit of an air about him. And that the year before on the team we had Chris Haney, who then had gone out of Double-A, and then he went to the majors quick. So I asked this guy. I remember I'd asked Chris, what's his goal for the next year? Would it be a Double-A or whatever? And Chris said, well, I'd like to, but he was just a humble guy. So I asked this guy, what's your goal for next year, to be at Double-A? He said, I think that I should be there now. He got released, I think, at the end of July, so that took care of his trip to Double-A.
Jim, started covering this in 1977, and here you're going to start again tomorrow night. With the gates opening at 5 o'clock, you'll probably be right there when the gate does open and Dave Wellens lets you in. Certainly take that opening day picture of Mayor Teresi at 7:05.
Maybe.